In 2021, workers at Starbucks in Buffalo, New York became the coffee giant's first store to unionize here in the United States. The evolution of the movement is the subject of a new documentary screening in Jacksonville this week. The Academy Award nominated documentary filmmaker Mark Mori joins us to discuss his documentary Baristas versus Billionaires. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much. It's a thrill to be here.
This documentary follows a new generation of young workers leading a national and increasingly international movement to challenge one of the world's most powerful corporations, Starbucks. Why did you want to create this documentary?
Well, before I became a filmmaker, I was a union steel worker. And so I understood this. And I saw that young people were beginning to rise up and organize themselves into unions because a lot of them, they feel like they have no future. They can't afford to get married. They can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford to have children. I saw that these young people were actually standing up and doing something about it. And I could see that it was a whole movement because this started with organizing a single store in Buffalo, New York. Now there are 700 Starbucks stores unionized in the United States, and have been strikes at Starbucks in Chile and Brazil, and there's been support for the Starbucks workers in 12 different countries, demonstrations.
And you had some big names contributing to this documentary. Alec Baldwin is a contributing producer. Susan Sarandon actually narrated it. How were you able to get them involved?
Well, Alec Baldwin is an old friend of mine. We did several documentary TV series together. I've known him for 35 years. And when I told him about it, he was immediately supportive and jumped on board to help. And of course, he's even traveled with me to some film festivals. And of course, Susan Sarandon, Academy Award winner, when she found out about it, she was flabbergasted to find out what was happening with these Starbucks workers. So they both volunteered their service for the film.
What factors led to the Starbucks employees wanting to unionize, especially during COVID?
Well, yeah, I think during COVID, they were feeling very mistreated because they were getting, a lot of small shops were shut down, but Starbucks was considered a necessary, and it was really, and I think in a way for Starbucks to put some of these small businesses out of business. But they were getting short-staffed. In other words, there wasn't enough people. A lot of the people were out sick. The very first strike at the first store that unionized happened during COVID because so many people were out sick, and they felt Starbucks was not help protecting them and making it difficult for them to function.
And at the same time, during COVID, the CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, is talking about record profits during the pandemic. And meanwhile, you have the stark difference of employees saying they can't pay their bills and having staffing issues. Explain how you were able to paint that picture in this documentary of the two different worlds between the corporation and its employees.
Well, we have a fair amount of Howard Schultz in the film. Was the CEO of Starbucks for many, many years. And so there's plenty of stuff of him in the media, which we were able to use, from CNN, NBC, places like that. And then, of course, there's the meeting he had in Buffalo with the baristas there to try to talk them out of the union. And, of course, he just stuck his foot in his mouth, and that's what convinced a lot of them to join the union. On the other hand, the story of the baristas themselves, they have their hours restricted. Schultz likes to talk about how he implemented health care for Starbucks workers, but the managers limit the workers to less hours than they can qualify for health benefits. Also, they were underpaid. One thing that happened when Schultz realized that the union was coming in, he immediately raised everybody's wages at Starbucks. In other words, just by the threat of a union, they got a raise. And of course, it's not enough yet. The average salary of a Starbucks barista is something like $14,000 a year. And the new CEO or CEO of the last year or two, Brian Nicole, was paid $96 million for about 4 months' work. So that contrast, all you have to do is put those two things next to each other, and that's the story.
The documentary also highlights the story of a group of employees infamously known as the Memphis Seven, Who are they, and why were their efforts so important to this story?
Well, the Memphis Seven, they saw what was going on in Buffalo. They were from a particular store in Memphis, the store at Poplar and Highland, and they got in touch with the people in Buffalo. So this was an example of how the thing spread like wildfire from one store to 700 stores. But what's unique about the Memphis Seven is they were all fired in a single day for trying to organize a union. The National Labor Relations Board reinstated them because they agreed that Starbucks fired them for union organizing, and their case went all the way to the Supreme Court. Starbucks took it all the way to the Supreme Court.
And unfortunately, they got a blow with that Supreme Court case as well, right?
Well, yes, the Supreme Court case became about a technical issue with the power of the National Labor Relations Board to protect workers. And so Starbucks won, I think it was a unanimous vote at the Supreme Court, to reduce the power of the National Labor Relations Board. So that had an effect on all workers, not just Starbucks or the Memphis Seven.
And you would think that would have stopped the unionizing efforts altogether, but it didn't.
Well, no, because the same problems exist at all these Starbucks stores. They're all having their hours cut. You know, some of them make so little that they're on food stamps and government assistance. I mean, that's crazy. You have a CEO making $96 million and, you know, a barista making $46,000 with no benefit. I mean, making $14,000 with no benefits. I mean, that didn't change.
And in the film, employees describe feeling intimidated by some of the pretty intense union busting tactics. Let's take a look and a listen.
The next week, I showed up at work, and there were people I'd never seen before trying to talk to me while I was at work.
Howard Schultz sends a swarm of corporate-level, out-of-state managers into Buffalo, New York.
They flew in from around the country to bust the union. Starbucks calls them the Buffalo SWAT team.
Anyone that you could imagine from the upper echelons of Starbucks corporate were in my store constantly.
Were those tactics effective?
Well, not in the sense that the union has now expanded to 700 stores. And of course, Starbucks has really, I think, damaged their reputation by how they've been treating people. And, you know, it's effective in discouraging some people, but there are other people that are stepping up, and that's how they've gotten to 700 stores. And they're adding more stores every week to the union.
How does the documentary highlight the contrast between Starbucks' reputation and how workers say they were treated? How are you kind of able to do that even without speaking to Starbucks? I know you had clips of Howard Schultz in there, but how did you really kind of paint that picture for people?
Well, we made several requests to interview Howard Schultz or anybody from Starbucks management. They declined, so we relied on those news clips. But I think Starbucks' reputation is pretty obvious. You ask just about any person on the street, it has this good reputation that they built up over years, which they've now been destroying for the last few years because it's profit above all else. I mean, they can afford to pay their workers. And all you have to do is listen to the workers talk about what the reality is at Starbucks, and Schultz promoting their reputation begins to sound very hollow.
Has this movement inspired other companies to organize?
Well, yes. I mean, I think a lot of people know that Amazon's been attempting to organize, but REI, Apple, Trader Joe's, there's a whole long list of companies where young people in their 20s are rising up. I mean, it's like they're almost given no choice. Their pay is so low and they're treated so badly. That's the outlet they have to do something about it.
In the documentary film, Senator Bernie Sanders forced Howard Schultz to testify at a Senate committee hearing. Talk about that hearing and what impact that had in the documentary.
Well, that hearing in 2023, Howard Schultz refused to testify until Bernie Sanders threatened to subpoena him. And then he shows up, and there were many Starbucks baristas in the audience at that hearing, and they really grilled Howard Schultz. And I think their goal was to publicly expose what was going on at Starbucks. I mean, Bernie Sanders says at the hearing, Starbucks is the worst labor law violator in the 21st century. And they go through chapter and verse of all the things that Starbucks has done. And, Howard Schultz gets offended when he's called a billionaire. He's put out by that. That was shocking that he is seeking pity because he feels he's being unjustly treated. And it's just a blowback for what he's been doing.
And he was also particularly offended when the senator brought up his father and the fact that his father was someone who would have unionized.
Yes, well, you see that comes up twice in the film. First, when Schultz is at the meeting in Buffalo trying to talk the workers out of joining the union, he tells the story of his father, who was a laborer and slipped on a piece of ice, severely injured, lost his job, and their family was very poor. And somehow, so if he'd had a union to protect him, that would have been different. In other words, that was Senator Markey repeating the story then back in the hearing and saying, the Starbucks workers are like your father. They have no rights.
And you could tell he responded to that pretty emotionally.
Yes, he did. Yes, he gets upset and he says, can I respond to that? And Bernie Sanders says, well, you've got 30 seconds. And he gets kind of outraged that he only has 30 seconds to tell his side of the story.
Can you talk a little bit about the role of Gen Z and millennials in this labor movement? Why have they been and played such a critical role in fighting back?
Well, these are the young people in their 20s and 30s who they're working in some place like Starbucks. Maybe they're getting $15 an hour. Many of them have student debt, and you can't pay off student debt and have a real living on $15 an hour. So what was your question?
I mean, the young generation has
Yes.
really led this movement.
Yeah, that's what's unique about it, and that's what the film is really about. This is a new, younger generation that's rising up to do something about this wealth gap between this ever-narrowing few billionaires seeming to want to take everything for themselves. Everything is sacrificed at the altar of profit, including the lives of these young people and their ability to live and work and have respect. And so they're responding this to me reminds me a lot. I don't know how many people know the labor history of the United States. In the 1930s, there was a big uprising, and that's how the union movement originally arose in this country, the United Auto Workers and people like that. And so this younger generation, they are the children and grandchildren of the workers in the Rust Belt who were laid off from steel mills and factories, their jobs sent to China. They saw their parents and grandparents lose their pensions, lose their jobs. So they're, in a sense, I call it the revenge of the Rust Belt.
And it's interesting, your film, which has the title Billionaires, has come out at a time we now have a trillionaire in Elon Musk. And how is that having an impact on the wealth gap? And I think a lot of people want to know, what can they do about it? I mean, is this union movement going to be what changes the wealth gap in America?
Well, I think it's part of it. I mean, it's an important part of it. I mean, there are workers in their millions who could organize. And when you saw the rise of unions like the UAW and the steel workers in the 1930s, that became a very powerful movement. That's what built the middle class in this country. And the middle class has been destroyed, or is in the process of being destroyed, driven down. And so I think it's a union movement is part of the answer, but there's these young people in this union movement are inspiring a lot of people to realize they can stand up and try to do something about this.
Are you concerned at how artificial intelligence is going to play a role and whether or not it's going to help or hurt the unions?
Well, I think artificial intelligence, from what I'm understanding, is going to put a lot of people out of work, but it's more than just putting people out of work. I mean, it's becoming part of the surveillance state. They want to use AI to know everything everybody does. They want to track where you go, what you do, how you spend your money. They're going to track your bank account, and they may decide, oh, well, you're spending money on something we don't like, and they cut you off. I mean, this has been done in other countries. So the AI thing is a much bigger issue than just jobs.
you are having a screening of this film at the Museum of Contemporary Art in Jacksonville later this week. What can people expect that they're when they attend this event?
Okay, it's going to be at the Museum of Contemporary Art at noon on Saturday the 20th. I will be there. Several of the other of my team of filmmakers will be there. My producing partner's coming down from Atlanta. And we'll screen the film. It's going to be actually a version of the film that nobody's seen before, because it's we've added 4 minutes about the recent national strike, and we kind of put this polish on it because now it's eligible to be submitted for Academy Award consideration. So they're going to see this brand new polished version of the film. And then there's Todd Rubin, the Jacksonville film office. He's going to be interviewing me there, and we'll have a whole discussion, and there will be some Starbucks baristas there.
Oh, wow. And is there a call to action with this film? Is there something that you're asking the audience to do?
Well, we're asking the audience to support the film and to support the Starbucks baristas. They can go to our website, baristasversusbillionaires.com, and they can find out a lot more about the film and about the struggle and how to support Starbucks workers also. I mean, we're intimately involved with Starbucks workers in trying to spread the word, really, is what the film is about. Spread the word about their struggle.
And what has the feedback been like to this documentary from people who've seen it so far?
I just had somebody tell me yesterday, oh, I saw the film. I'm not going to Starbucks anymore. I deleted the Starbucks app. That's one of the things the baristas are calling for, is people to delete the Starbucks app. But I think it's eye-opening, and a lot of people find it inspiring that actually there's a positive message, a positive action being taken, because we seem to be overwhelmed with all this billionaires taking all the money and things. It's obvious to a lot of people things are just going downhill in this country. So here's something positive about it.
And do you feel that it makes people feel empowered to do something, or do you feel like they watch this film and say it's an uphill battle?
Well, it's obviously an uphill battle, but I think what you really get from the film is how inspiring these Starbucks workers are. I mean, that's part of the consistent feedback I get is people feel very inspired and empowered when they watch this. You know, this is not some downer documentary with a bad message. It has an empowering, uplifting, powerful message.
And as far as very quickly as we wrap, those workers, some of them still haven't gotten back pay that are supposed to get back pay.
That's
from
true. The Memphis 7 were ordered to have their back pay in 2023. Starbucks has still not given them back pay.
Well, this is definitely going to be a popular event. Again, Saturday, June 20th at 12 p.m. Tickets are selling fast. They are available through Eventbrite. And again, there will be a Q&A with Mark Mori after the film. This is taking place at Mocha, and it's going to be definitely a hot topic and a big talker. So thank you so much for joining us, Mark.
Well, thank you.